Good morning, everybody. I know it's not morning right now for you or even for me. Well, it could be for some of you, but it's morning somewhere in the world, so we're all good. Okay, today I got a question from Mark Griffiths about burning DVDs using compressor. And not DVDs, sorry, about burning Blu-rays using compressor. And I'm going to kind of run through how to do that. Let me close this and show you how compressor usually looks when it first starts up. Now, there's a couple of things to know. There are two different kinds of Blu-rays, and it's not necessarily the physical disc that makes a difference. It's how you burn the disc and how you create the disc. There is the Blu-ray ROM and the Blu-ray video. And I'm going to show you how to make the Blu-ray video first, and then we will discuss the Blu-ray ROM because that has a lot more freedom to it. Okay, normally compressor starts out like this. And you can add a file by just clicking here and choosing a file, or you can open up your Finder and grab a file and drop it in. Both ways work. Okay, I don't want this one here. I like to know a little more detail, so I tend to hit the show over here, and I tend to hit the inspector. This is the inspector on the right side, and this is your list of settings and locations and destinations. Now, the way compressor works is it has settings, and it has destinations, and it has locations. A setting is a particular video codec that you're going to use, or an audio codec, or a combination of the two in order to create the type of file that you want. A location is where the ending file will be saved. And each of these settings, as you go through them, some of them won't have default locations. A lot of the ones that I have, like this one here, has a default location. The locations not only dictate where it will go. For example, this one here shows where it's going to go, and this is the pathway right here. But sometimes it dictates how it will be named. Let me see. Let's find this one right here. Okay. So for example, on this one, if you look in your inspector, you'll see where it's going to go. But you'll see that the name will be called whatever the file name is originally, and then it will add H.264 on the end. I don't have a lot of things that have interesting things added to the end. A lot of your typical ones will have, like your built-in desktop, will send it to the desktop using the source file name and then the setting that you've chosen. Okay, so that's locations and settings. The other thing we have is groups, and the groups are basically folders. What's neat about groups is, let's say I put in a video here and I want all three of these, I can grab the group and drop it in. And by doing that, or even if I click add file and choose one, I can add a group. Let's go to custom client. Okay, and it will add all three settings, all three locations with the file names and all that. Okay, now let's talk about destinations. Destinations are a little bit more than just a setting or a location. They are an action, and they're actually quite cool. So if I go over here to spot transfers, for example, and let's say I want to bring in Master Jam Mixdown. Now I tend to do this drag and drop thing. It's a little easier for me, helps me find things a lot faster. But unfortunately, I have some settings that automatically insert a setting and a destination already. Okay, let's say I do that, and I go publish to YouTube. Now, yeah, let's publish to YouTube. Okay, we do this. Now there's a little triangle here, and the reason this shows up is because there are some things in here on this action that need to be done. So I would need to put in my username, my password, title, description, tags if I want, the category. So I could actually upload this video that I'm recording now. I could throw into Compressor and put in all this information into YouTube or into the publish to YouTube. And once it finishes exporting this or compressing this, it will publish it by itself. I don't have to worry about it. Okay, for this one, I'm going to create a Blu-ray. Let's do it this way. Let's do it add file. And then I'll grab this Monster Jam and add it. And now you can see the difference. These are the folders. They have these little switches on them. And then these are the actions or the destinations that have the little forwarding icon on them. Okay, so I'm going to create Blu-ray. Now you can open up Create Blu-ray and you can pick these two settings if you choose. But I want the whole action. So I'm just going to click on Create Blu-ray and hit OK. And when I do, it's showing me this because I actually did this earlier just to practice. It shows me this, and it has the action here of Create Blu-ray Disc. Now you don't see any errors because on a Blu-ray it doesn't necessarily have to have like a login name and password and stuff, so it comes out pretty clean. But here's some things that we need to know about it. If you look up here, this will tell you your duration of the movie and what it's encoded to right now. And then this tells you your timing. This also goes along with your duration. And then you have field order, top first, progressive, bottom first. With broadcast television, we use top first. If you were doing something that was going to be put specifically on Blu-ray in 24 frames per second, you'd want to use progressive. It all depends on your target. Okay, and if you had closed captions, you could choose them. You can add some things in there about the... Oh, this video is about Monster Jam Mixdown. You can have different things in there that can show up in the Blu-ray. Okay, action. When done, you can create a Blu-ray disc or do any of these things, but we're going to stick with create a Blu-ray disc. And by keeping it that way, we can see several different options. Right now, I can pick my output device. I can tell it how many layers it has if I know how many layers my disc has. I can pick a template. I tend to stay with the black one. I like it. I can choose to play the movie or show the menu when it starts, when the disc loads. I can give it a name. And this will be the name that pops up here on the menu. I can add chapter markers as subtitles if I want. I can include a loop movie button, which I usually do. I can change the background, the logo, and the title, much like I did in the Final Cut Pro. If you want to know more about this, in my Final Cut Pro video, I go over all of these options a little more in depth, and I show you what they do exactly. Okay. Now, let's say, you know what? Let me throw this in here so you can kind of see a little bit more information about something. Let's do David Wilson's Toyota. This is a 30-minute show. Okay? And I want you to see it because when you look at this and I click on this, it's going to show you exactly how big it's going to be. And this is 6.5 gigs almost. Including this, it probably will be 6.5 gigs. Not quite. Close to it. A little under 6.5 gigs. Okay? What that means is for every hour, it's about 13 gigabytes. So for 2 hours, I'm running into 26 gigabytes. One of the issues is that Blu-ray itself, a standard Blu-ray disc, is only 25 gigabytes. So I won't be able to fit it on this at all. I won't be able to fit this at this rate onto a Blu-ray. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to video. And in here, it has all these different settings. if I were to change the frame rate, which I could do, you might not see the file size drop because I think it'll change the frame rate and make it slow down. However, this automatically select the best bit rate based on the source duration and disk type. If I uncheck this, I can mess with this bit rate and watch that file size go down. Now, I'm going to take it down to 14 and take this to 17. And you can see I'm at 3 gigs. So 3 gigabytes per every 30 minutes means 6 gigabytes an hour, which means in 24 gigabytes I can get 4 hours of video, generally speaking. So this is how I can fit more onto a Blu-ray video. Okay. Then you have some other settings down here, your cropping and padding. You can crop the video and pad the video. Padding basically adds black around it. Cropping the video brings in the sides and will make it, like if it's a 16:9, it will make it zoom in a way. Padding kind of zooms out, I guess. If I were to resize, I can pick a different filter. Each one of these will slow it down. So fast is quite quick. Better and best will slow it down. I think best is actually very slow, but it'll make really good quality. Retiming quality, same thing, fast, better, best. Motion compensation motion compensated will kind of track the motion and make it really nice. You can add adaptive details with anti-aliasing levels, detail levels. A couple other things that I have set up is I have a cluster. The cluster is basically my computer, but I do have this computer as well. I tend to not use this computer because the cluster on my computer, I have 6 processors, and so it will segment the processing and allow me to process several things at once. Not all the time. It does it sometimes, but it tends to be a little faster for me if I do that. If I just use my computer, it limits me to 1 processor, and that gets a little annoying. The other thing is if you do have several Macs and you have compressor installed on every single one of them, you can create a cluster with all of those. One has to have some pretty massive storage so that you can use that as your master. And it will distribute the processes to all the other Macs in your network, just depending on how you want to do it. Okay, I'm going to start this batch, and just to let you know what happens. Okay. Yeah, it's not doing the distributed processing right now, which is fine, no big deal. But a lot of times it'll process both of these at the same time. Now what will happen is, once this is done, actually, let me do this with another video just so I can get it done quickly. Okay, let's go back in there and let's just add a file. Let's do that Monster Jam. Okay, we'll do create Blu-ray. And we'll start the batch. And I'm just going to let this go. All right. And then once it's done, it'll bring up the disk burn thing, and you can see where we go from there. Okay, so now that it is done, it's bringing up create disk. You don't have to click on it. I just wanted to show you that it's here in the dock. Okay, and it says, please insert the media to burn the disk. I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to hit cancel burn. But if you put it into your Blu-ray burner, it will allow you to burn that disk right away. It'll just queue it up and start burning, and it'll get done quickly. It takes about 10-15 minutes, but it's not too bad. Okay, so I'm going to cancel burn. It's going to show me that it failed. It shows me that it failed because of the fact that host DVD burn canceled. Okay. All right. Let's say I'm in Final Cut Pro and I want to export my event not using the Blu-ray thing. I want to export it to Compressor because let's say it's too big. Specifically, Mark mentioned that his video was around 2 hours long and it wouldn't fit on a Blu-ray. And if you tried to put it in, I guess if you try to put it in Final Cut Pro or iMovie, it didn't compress it enough, so he wanted to see how to do it on Compressor. All right, so I'm going to open up one of these. And this is a project I did last week. So it's opened up. Everything's all rendered, it looks like. And here's what we're going to do. Instead of sharing it like I usually do, I'm just going to go send to Compressor. And when I do, it will automatically pull up the settings that I had set before that I have as default. Let's shrink this down a bit. And this time I don't want to do that. I'm just going to grab the Create Blu-ray and drop it in. I could also hit that Add Outputs, but I'm just going to grab the Create Blu-ray and I'll click here. Now, just like I said before, on the Final Cut Pro, you have the same options. And this time I'm going to make it play the movie, include the loop movie button. Everything is good. All right. Now here, if I click on H.264 for Blu-ray, and I look up here, it's 6.41 gigs. So if I go into my video tab, I can bring my bit rate down to 14 and 17. And now I'm at 3 gigs. 3 gigs for this file. So that gives me 6 gigs per hour, 24 gigs for 4 hours. So I should be able to fit a lot more. Now you can play with these things. You'll notice as you play with the average bit rate, the maximum bit rate will go up. And if you bring the maximum bit rate down, it will stop somewhere like usually 2 megabits per second above your average. Now I didn't arbitrarily pick 14. I'm going to tell you what it is. We, as a broadcaster, are only allowed 19 megabits per second. At least that's what I'm told. And so our encoding, over-the-air encoding for digital television, we actually bring it back to 14 megabits per second. And the reason we do this is because we have 2 other channels plus a mobile television thing. And it takes up all the rest of our bandwidth. The mobile television is only like 1 megabit per second, but the other channels do take up some extra bandwidth. And so normally we're at 18 megabits per second, but we have brought it down to 14. We sometimes even hit as low as 12. It tends to look pretty darn good, so we're okay with it. A lot of times your stuff that you see on Netflix and Hulu and Vudu can even go as low as 3 megabits per second, but they're generally hanging around between 9 to 14, and they still look pretty darn good. What I do recommend is clicking this multipass button, because what this will do is it will go through and it will figure out exactly which frames to make the keyframes, how to interpolate between all the keyframes and the intermediate frames, and how to make it look as best as it can using these settings and this file size, and get it as close to this with the highest quality. So I definitely recommend the multipass, especially if you have the time to go for it. Okay, now if I were to start this batch, notice one thing. Because I sent it from Final Cut Pro, I cannot pick my cluster. I have to process it on this computer. And the problem is it doesn't use all my processing power. So this 4 times slower or 4 times multipass can actually mean a huge difference. Now, generally speaking, what I do is I export the file as a ProRes movie, and then I bring it in and do this with Compressor. I find it to be a little bit faster because it can segment out the jobs into the different processors, and it can use all my processing power even if it's doing the multipass. And also, because it's doing that, I can do other things while it's compressing. I don't have to sit here and wait. Now, I really don't have to wait in Final Cut Pro. I could go back and do more things while it's processing. But for some reason, because it's constantly referencing the old project, it tends to kind of slow you down a little bit. Whereas if you export it as your own video or as a self-contained video and then bring it back in, you won't have that problem of constantly referencing the project. And so you can continue working in Final Cut Pro as if nothing's going on. Now, it will slow you down a bit, but you can also adjust your cluster to fix that. I'm not going to go over clusters in this video because they can get pretty complicated. That would be for a whole other video on its own. Okay, I'm not going to take this action. I'm going to just erase it. And I'm going to quit compressor. Okay. Now, that is a Blu-ray video. Let's talk about Blu-ray ROM. I'm going to open up compressor again. A Blu-ray ROM is basically, let's say I grabbed a Blu-ray disc and I stuck it in and I just dragged files and dropped it on the disc. Okay? That is a disc that would open up in Finder, and it would have my videos as they are in Finder, and it would just copy them directly over there. If I were to try to put this into a Blu-ray player, it would tell me that there's no disc. The Blu-ray video will tell me that there's a disc, and if I try to put it in my Mac, it probably won't work very well. Sometimes it does, depending on what you have. The Blu-ray video is specifically to give to people that are going to play it from the disc. The Blu-ray ROM is for archiving purposes. Okay? Now, when I went over that lesson before where I was archiving all my stuff and showing you how to archive your libraries, that's a Blu-ray ROM. And the difference is if I were to put one of these libraries into somebody's Blu-ray player, it would tell me that there's nothing there. And if I were to take it over to Windows, it probably wouldn't work. It's specifically for your computer, and it's specifically to transfer those to another computer with the exact same software. Now, what I need to remember, or what you need to remember when you're making a Blu-ray ROM, is that different codecs have different bit rates and different sizes, and all kinds of different little things that make it up. There are three basic types of codecs. There's an acquisition codec, an editing codec, and a finishing codec. An acquisition codec are things like MXF, H.264 you can acquisition in. You can do MPEG-2 as well. But a lot of times it's more along the lines of MPEG-4, MXF, DVC Pro HD, so on and so forth. Those are codecs that usually come native on a camera, and they're best done on the fly. They're codecs that do all those iframes and everything on the fly rather than trying to do it later on and making really high quality compression. They just kind of do it as quickly as they can. They take a little bit more space than, say, a finishing codec would, but they take less space than an editing codec. And the reason is because they have iframes, they have keyframes, they have B frames and all those types of things. The editing codecs generally are 100%. Each frame has 100% of all the information. The reason editing codecs do that is because they need to be accessed quickly. They need to try to not decompress as much as possible. And you want to be able to make changes without having to re-render the entire sequence every single time. So, for example, if I'm in here working with David Wilson's Toyota and I grab this and drop this over here like this, notice I have no rendering. Well, that's because this is in Apple ProRes 422. It has been converted to that format, and which is an editing codec. And the reason it does that, That's analyzing for dominant motion. Nice. The reason it does that is so that I can access it quickly and I can scrub around it. Oh, it does have a rendering thing. It does that because, let's remove all this stuff. Stabilization and correction. Actually, the correction can probably be on. No, it still renders. Okay, so I turn the stabilization and correction off, and now there's no rendering, right? And that is because it is an Apple ProRes 422. If this were done in MXF, it would want to render it. And it basically wants to convert it to an editing codec. If I were to make a cut and another cut and remove this piece, it doesn't have to render the entire sequence. Now, if I were working in something like HDV, that's a prime example of a acquisition codec that is not very good as an editing codec, because whenever you do HDV, you have to render your entire sequence every single time you want to look at it. Or at least you used to. It might be different now, but I remember having to deal with that, and it drove me nuts. And then Apple came out with the Apple Intermediate Codec, which is a editing codec that works with HDV. Now you have what are called finishing codecs. That's the last category. And a lot of these codecs that are in Compressor are finishing codecs. So your Blu-ray H.264, your Apple devices, publishing to YouTube, all these types of things are finishing codecs. ProRes is not. ProRes is an editing codec. Uncompressed is an editing codec. The reason you have finishing codecs is those are the final product that is going to be played, and they generally have a much lower bit rate than your editing codecs, than actually any of the other codecs, even the acquisition codec. And this is because when you're playing back, you're not going to make any changes. This is your final product, and so the computer will go through and find out which are the keyframes and then figure out how to interpolate between them. And you will have the most compression with the least artifacts if you wait until the end to put on a finishing codec. If you bring it back from a finishing codec, you'll start introducing artifacts like crazy. Okay, so if you're doing a Blu-ray ROM, you'll want to go through and pick a good finishing codec, or maybe even a good archiving codec that you want to try to use that will give you a small enough file size, yet will still be able to give you the quality that you want, so that if you bring it back, you don't introduce a whole bunch of artifacts. I found a few that I liked. I actually like this Avid Meridian codec. It runs about 50 megabits per second, I believe is what it is. And ProRes is running about 144. So it's about a third the size of a ProRes of the same quality or same basic parameters. So therefore, my 30-minute show is 30 gigs. If I were to do that, finish it with Meridian Alpha or archive it with Meridian, actually not Meridian with Alpha, just Meridian. If I were to archive it with Meridian, I would run probably around 10 gigs per minute, or per 30 minutes. So I can get an hour on 20 gigs. Now that's still not going to finish. It's not going to fit on my Blu-ray ROM because I can only get up to 25 gigs. I also have 50 gig Blu-rays as well. Now that's not going to fit on a Blu-ray ROM because I only have about 25 gigs to play with, but I could use something like this and just get a really high bit rate and still work with it. Okay. So that's Compressor in a nutshell. A lot of things to think about. It's pretty much your own thing. You can kind of play with it and do whatever you want. If you start getting these errors, you see these red things when you go to completed, and they're not things that you did. Here's how to clean it out. Go to Compressor Preferences and go over to Advanced and hit Reset Queue. and you can restart the jobs, cancel all the jobs, and you can hit repair compressor. If you're getting a lot of these red things where it says it failed, try that repair compressor, and also try setting up a cluster just in case. A lot of times the processing works better with a cluster, even if it's just your computer as the cluster, than it does using this computer. I don't know why, it just does. All right. Well, thank you guys very much for watching, and thanks Mark Griffiths for asking the question. I appreciate that. Kind of helps me give you guys some good subject material. If you do have any more questions, leave me some comments, send me a message, however you want. And I'll do my best to answer them. All right. Thank you very much for watching.